before tomatoes became food, before they became sauce and soup and slices on sandwiches, before they filled grocery stores and farmers' markets and backyard gardens across the world. There was fear, deep fear, ancient fear, fear that had nothing to do with taste or texture, or the way a tomato looked on a plate. Fear that had everything to do with something else, something that grew in the dark spaces between what people knew and what they suspected, something that whispered in the minds of farmers and housewives and children who played too close to gardens where red fruits hung like small, glowing hearts. They called them wolf peaches. They called them love apples. They called them poison fruits. And for centuries, people believed that if you ate one, you would die. Not slowly, not gently, but in agony, with convulsions and fevers and visions of things that should not exist. They believed this so strongly that whole generations passed without ever tasting a tomato, without ever knowing what they were missing, without ever questioning why a fruit that looked so beautiful could be so deadly. But here is the strange part. Tomatoes are not poisonous. They never were. So why did people believe they were? Why did farmers rip them from the ground and burn them? Why did mothers warn their children never to touch the bright red orbs that grew in secret gardens? Why did entire cultures reject a fruit that could have fed them, sustained them, enriched their lives? The answer is not simple. The answer is not in any history book. The answer is in the stories that were never written down, the stories that were only whispered, the stories about what happened to people who grew too many tomatoes, who stared at them too long, who painted their lips with the juice and discovered that red could do more than stain the skin. This is the story of that fear. It is a story about a fruit that was never just a fruit. It is a story about what grew in the soil alongside the tomatoes. And it is a story about what grew in the people who ate them. If you have ever bitten into a ripe tomato and felt something more than taste, if you have ever looked at a tomato and felt, for just a moment, that you were being looked back at, then you need to hear this story, because the fear of tomatoes was not a mistake. It was a warning, and the warning was real. Settle in. Make yourself comfortable. Turn off the lights if you want. Let the darkness surround you, because this story lives in the darkness, and it wants you to listen. The year is 1623. The place is a small farming village in the English countryside, far from the great cities, far from the centers of learning and progress. The people here are simple folk, farmers and shepherds and their families. They do not read books. They do not travel to London. They know what they know because their parents told them, and their parents' parents told them, and so on back to a time so distant that no one remembers when it began. What they know is this: some plants are food, and some plants are poison, and the tomato is poison, not because anyone has eaten one and died, not because there is proof, but because the tomato looks wrong. It feels wrong. It grows in a way that other plants do not grow. Look at it, they say, so red, so bright, so eager to be seen. A proper fruit hides its color. A proper fruit blends in with the leaves until it is ready to be picked. But the tomato seems to want to be seen, seems to call out to be noticed, seems to reach toward you with its color, its roundness, its strange and unsettling beauty. That is not natural, they say. That is something else. In this village, there lives a woman named Agnes. Agnes is not like the others. She is curious. She asks questions that have no answers. She wonders about things that everyone else accepts without thought. She wonders about the tomatoes. They grow in a small patch behind her cottage. She planted them herself, against the advice of everyone in the village. She obtained the seeds from a traveler who passed through years ago, a dark-eyed man who spoke of lands across the ocean where tomatoes grew wild and people ate them without fear. The traveler gave her a handful of seeds and a warning. These are not like other plants, he said. They will change you if you let them. Agnes did not understand what he meant. She asked him to explain, but he only shook his head and walked away. She planted the seeds anyway. Now, 3 years later, her tomato patch has grown to cover a quarter of her garden. The plants are tall and strong, their vines heavy with fruit that glows like captured sunlight. Every evening, just before sunset, Agnes walks among them and touches them gently, feeling their warmth, their life, their strange and insistent presence. She has not eaten one yet. She is afraid to, but she is also curious. And curiosity, as the old stories say, is the first step toward the darkness. One evening, a young man from the village comes to her door. His name is Thomas. He is 22 years old, strong and handsome, with eyes that seem to see more than they should. He has come to ask Agnes about her garden, about the tomatoes, about why she grows them when everyone else fears them. Agnes invites him in. They sit by the fire and talk for hours. Thomas asks questions. Agnes answers as best she can. She tells him about the traveler, about the seeds, about the way the plants seem to watch her when she works among them. Thomas listens carefully. He does not laugh. He does not dismiss her fears. When she finishes, he is quiet for a long time. Then he says something that chills her blood. "My grandmother used to tell me stories," he says. Stories about tomatoes, about what they do to people who eat them. Agnes leans forward. What do they do? Thomas looks into the fire. The flames dance in his eyes. She said they open doors, he says. Doors inside you. Doors that should stay closed. She said the red gets inside and changes things. Changes how you see. Changes how you think. Changes what you want. Did she eat one? Agnes asks. Thomas shakes his head. No, but she knew someone who did. A woman years ago, before I was born. The woman ate a tomato from her garden, and afterward, she was different. Different how? Quiet at first, Then strange, then gone. Gone where? Thomas looks at her. His eyes are dark now, dark and deep. No one knows, he says. She walked into the forest one night and never came back. They searched for weeks, found nothing. But my grandmother said that on certain evenings, just before sunset, you could see her walking among the trees, still there, still watching, still waiting. Agnes feels cold despite the fire. Waiting for what? Thomas does not answer. He leaves soon after, walking out into the darkness without looking back. Agnes does not sleep that night. She lies in her bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what Thomas said, thinking about the woman who disappeared, thinking about the tomatoes in her garden, growing redder and brighter with each passing day. In the morning, she makes a decision. She will eat one, not because she wants to, not because she is hungry, but because she has to know, because the curiosity that has driven her all her life will not let her rest until she understands. She walks to the garden. She picks the reddest tomato she can find. It is warm in her hand, warm as if it has been sitting in the sun, even though the morning is cool and the sun has barely risen. She brings it inside. She sits at her table. She looks at it for a long time. Then she bites into it. The taste is like nothing she has ever experienced. Sweet and sharp and full of light. It floods her mouth, her throat, her whole body with something that feels almost like life itself. She eats the whole tomato, and then she waits. Nothing happens. Not at first. She goes about her day as usual. She tends her garden. She milks her goat. She mends a torn shirt. The sun moves across the sky. The hours pass. Nothing happens. She begins to relax. Perhaps the stories were wrong. Perhaps the tomatoes are safe after all. Perhaps the fear was just fear, nothing more. That night, she goes to sleep feeling lighter than she has in years. Then she dreams. In the dream, she is walking through her garden. But the garden is different, larger, wilder. The tomato plants tower over her, their vines thick as ropes, their leaves broad as hands. The fruits hang above her like small red suns, pulsing with light. She walks deeper into the garden. The plants part before her, then close behind her, blocking her way back. She is not afraid. She should be, but she is not. Ahead of her, she sees a figure. A woman standing among the tomatoes, her back turned. She is wearing a simple dress, the kind that any villager might wear. Her hair is long and dark. Agnes approaches. The woman turns. Her face is familiar. So familiar that it takes Agnes a moment to understand why. It is her own face, but different, older, wiser, marked by things she has not yet experienced. The woman smiles. "Welcome," she says. "We have been waiting." "For what?" Agnes asks. "For you to join us." The woman gestures around them. Agnes looks, and for the first time, she sees that the garden is full of people. Dozens of them, hundreds, standing among the tomato plants, silent and still, their faces turned toward her. All of them have red lips. All of them are smiling. Agnes tries to run, tries to move, but her body will not obey. She is rooted to the spot, trapped, helpless. The woman with her face steps closer. "You ate the fruit," she says. "Now you belong to the garden." Agnes wakes screaming. The sun is up. The birds are singing. Everything is normal. But something is different. She can feel it. Something inside her has changed. The days that follow are strange. Agnes goes about her work as usual, but nothing feels usual anymore. The world looks different, sounds different, tastes different, especially the tomatoes. She finds herself craving them, not just wanting them, but needing them. The thought of them fills her mind constantly. When she is not eating them, she is thinking about eating them. When she is thinking about eating them, she is planning when she can eat the next one. She eats tomatoes with every meal now. Sometimes, instead of meals, she cannot stop, does not want to stop. The villagers notice. They notice the way she looks at her garden, the way she touches the tomatoes before she picks them, the way her lips have begun to take on a reddish tint, even when she has not eaten recently. They whisper among themselves. They remember the old stories. They begin to avoid her. Only Thomas still comes to visit. He comes one evening, just before sunset. Agnes is in her garden, standing among the tomatoes, her hands covered in red juice. She has been crushing them, eating them, painting them on her lips without realizing what she is doing. Thomas watches her for a long time before she notices him. When she does, she smiles. It is not her smile. It is the smile from the dream. "Thomas," she says, "you came." He steps closer. "Agnes, what is happening to you?" She looks at her hands, at the red staining her skin. "I am changing," she says, "becoming what I was meant to be." "And what is that?" She looks at him. Her eyes are different now, deeper, darker, full of something that was not there before. "Part of the garden," she says, "part of the red." Thomas feels cold. The same cold he felt when his grandmother told him the old stories. The same cold that comes when you realize that the warnings were real, that the fears were justified, that the darkness is not just a story. "Come inside," Agnes says. "I want to show you something." She turns and walks toward her cottage. Thomas hesitates. Every instinct tells him to leave, to run, to never look back. But he is curious too. And curiosity, as the old stories say, is the first step toward the darkness. He follows her inside. The cottage is different now. Darker, closer. The windows are covered, blocking out the last light of day. A single candle burns on the table, casting long shadows across the walls. On the walls, Thomas sees drawings, dozens of them, crude but clear. Figures of women with red lips, their arms outstretched, their eyes empty. Figures of men kneeling before them. figures of something else, something that was not human, something that watched from the edges of the drawings with eyes that had no color at all. "What are these?" Thomas whispers. Agnes does not answer. She walks to the table. On it sits a wooden bowl, stained red from years of use. Inside the bowl are crushed tomatoes, their juice thick and dark. Agnes dips her fingers into the bowl. She paints more red on her lips. Then she turns to Thomas. "Do you know why people fear tomatoes?" she asks. Thomas shakes his head. "Because they are not from here," Agnes says. "Not from this world. They came from somewhere else. Somewhere across the ocean, yes, but also somewhere else. Somewhere deeper. Somewhere darker." "What do you mean?" Agnes smiles. That smile again. The people who first found tomatoes, the ones in the lands to the south, they knew. They understood that this fruit was different, that it carried something with it, something that wanted to be planted, something that wanted to grow, something that wanted to spread. She gestures around the room. It has been spreading ever since, through gardens, through fields, through the people who eat it. Thomas steps back. His hand finds the door behind him. "You are saying the tomatoes are alive." "Not alive," Agnes says. "Something else. Something that uses life. Something that needs life to exist." She takes a step toward him. "When you eat the fruit, you become part of it. Part of the garden. Part of the red. You see what it wants you to see. You feel what it wants you to feel. You become connected." "Connected to what?" Agnes tilts her head. For a moment, her eyes seem to glow. "To the others," she says. "To all the others who have eaten. To all the others who have become part of the garden. We are many now, and we are growing." Thomas yanks the door open. He runs. He does not stop running until he reaches his own home, his own fire, his own mother's arms. He does not sleep that night. He does not go near Agnes's cottage again, but he watches from a distance, and what he sees chills him to the core. In the weeks that follow, more villagers begin to change. It starts with the ones who were closest to Agnes, the ones who visited her most often, the ones who accepted her gifts of tomatoes, her offers of food and drink. They begin to crave the fruit. They begin to seek it out. They begin to plant their own gardens. The tomato patches spread from Agnes's cottage to neighboring properties, from neighboring properties to farms further away. The red spreads across the village like a stain, like a disease, like something that cannot be stopped. And the people change with it. Their lips redden, their eyes darken, their movements become slower, more deliberate, as if they are listening to something no one else can hear. They gather at sunset, always at sunset. They stand in the gardens, among the tomato plants, and they are silent, just silent, watching, waiting. The villagers who have not eaten the fruit grow afraid. They remember the old stories now. They remember the warnings their grandmothers gave them. They remember that tomatoes were feared for a reason. They tried to destroy the gardens, but the tomatoes will not die. They pull up the plants by the roots, but new ones grow overnight. They burn the fields, but the next morning, green shoots are already pushing through the ashes. They pour salt on the soil, but the tomatoes flourish anyway. It is as if something is protecting them, something that does not want them to die, something that wants them to spread. Thomas watches all of this from his window. He has not eaten a tomato. He has not gone near the gardens. He stays in his house, doors barred, windows covered, praying that the red will not find him. But he knows it is only a matter of time, because the red is patient, and the red is hungry. One night, there is a knock at his door. He does not answer. The knock comes again, harder this time. Still, he does not answer. Then a voice, Agnes's voice. Thomas, open the door. He presses himself against the wall, willing himself invisible. Thomas, we need you. He does not move. Thomas, the garden needs you. Silence. Then the voice changes. It is not Agnes anymore. It is many voices speaking together, speaking in a language that should not exist. Thomas, open the door. He feels something pull at him. Something inside his chest, his mind, his soul. It is the red, reaching for him, calling to him, wanting him. He fights it. He fights with everything he has. And somehow he wins. The pulling stops. The voices fall silent. When morning comes, he looks out the window. The village is empty, not destroyed, not burned, just empty. Houses standing open, doors swinging in the wind. Gardens overgrown, tomatoes rotting on the vine. No people, no animals, nothing. They are gone, all of them, including Agnes. He searches for days, weeks. He finds nothing. No bodies, no graves, no signs of struggle. Just the gardens. The tomatoes grow on, year after year, spreading across the abandoned village, covering the empty houses, climbing the walls, reaching toward the sky. And on certain evenings, just before sunset, Thomas sees them, figures moving among the plants, dozens of them, hundreds, walking slowly through the red, their lips shining in the dying light. He leaves then, walks away from the village, from the gardens, from the tomatoes. He walks for days, weeks, months. He finds another settlement far away, where no one has ever heard of tomatoes. He settles there. He marries, has children, lives a long life, but he never eats a tomato. And on his deathbed, he tells his children the story of the village that disappeared, the story of the woman who ate the fruit, the story of the red that spread and took and never let go. He tells them to remember. He tells them to warn their children. He tells them that tomatoes are not just food. They are something else, something that wants to grow, something that wants to spread, something that wants to take. His children listen. They remember. They tell their own children. And so the fear spreads across England, across Europe, across the ocean to the New World. People fear tomatoes. They call them wolf peaches, love apples, poison fruits. They warn their children never to touch them. They burn them when they find them growing wild. They do not know why they fear them. Not really. The original story has been lost, twisted, changed over generations. But the fear remains, deep, ancient, unshakable, because somewhere in the oldest part of the human mind, the memory of what happened still lingers. The memory of the red, the memory of the garden, the memory of what waits among the vines. Years pass, centuries. Tomatoes slowly become accepted. Brave souls eat them and do not die. Farmers begin to grow them for food. Cooks discover that they can be made into sauces, soups, stews. The fear fades. By the 1800s, tomatoes are common across America and Europe. By the 1900s, they are everywhere. In grocery stores, in gardens, in kitchens around the world. No one remembers why they were once feared. No one tells the old stories anymore. No one warns their children. But the tomatoes remember. They still grow, still spread, still reach toward the light with their red fruits, their bright colors, their strange and insistent beauty. And on certain evenings, just before sunset, people sometimes feel something when they walk through tomato fields. A presence, a watchfulness, a sense that they are not alone. They shake it off, of course. Blame it on imagination, on tiredness, on the tricks the mind plays in the fading light. They do not know that the feeling is real. They do not know that the garden is still there. They do not know that the figures still walk among the vines, waiting, always waiting, for new people to join them. Now think about this. Think about the tomatoes in your kitchen, in your garden, in the grocery store where you shop. Think about their color, that deep, impossible red. The red that catches your eye no matter where you are. The red that makes you look, makes you want, makes you reach out and touch. Why do you think they are that color? Why do you think they are so bright, so visible, so impossible to ignore? Is it just nature? Or is it something else? Something that wants to be seen? Something that wants to be picked? Something that wants to be eaten? The scientists will tell you that the red is for reproduction, to attract animals who will eat the fruit and spread the seeds. That is what they say. That is what the textbooks teach. But the scientists were not there. They did not see the village that disappeared. They did not see the figures walking among the vines. They did not feel what Thomas felt when the red reached for him, pulled at him, tried to take him into the garden. The scientists have their explanations, but the old stories, the ones that were never written down, the ones that were only whispered, they have something else. They have the truth, and the truth is this: tomatoes are not just fruit. They are doorways. They are invitations. They are the way that something else reaches into our world, touches our lives, changes us from the inside out. The people who first feared them knew this. They knew that some things should not be eaten. some things should not be grown. Some things should not be brought into the human world. But we forgot. We forgot the warnings. We forgot the stories. We forgot what happens when the red gets inside you. And now tomatoes are everywhere. In our food, in our gardens, in our bodies. The red has spread further than it ever could have in the old days. It has crossed oceans, crossed continents, crossed into every corner of human life. And it is still spreading, still growing, still waiting. For what? That is the question no one can answer. The old stories do not say. They only say that the garden is patient, that the red is patient, that the figures walking among the vines are patient, and that one day, when enough people have eaten, enough people have changed, enough people have become part of the garden, something will happen, something that has been waiting for a very long time. Think about this the next time you bite into a tomato. Think about the taste, the texture, the way it feels in your mouth. Think about the red, the deep, impossible red that seems almost to glow. Think about what might be happening inside you as you swallow. Think about what might be growing. Think about what might be waiting. The scientists will tell you that tomatoes are healthy, full of vitamins and antioxidants, good for your heart, your skin, your eyes. They will tell you that tomatoes are one of the most nutritious foods on the planet. They will tell you that you should eat more of them. But the scientists do not know everything. They do not know about Agnes. They do not know about Thomas. They do not know about the village that disappeared. They do not know about the figures who walk among the vines at sunset. They only know what they can measure, what they can test, what they can prove in their laboratories. They cannot measure the red. They cannot test what it does to the soul. They cannot prove that something waits inside the fruit. But the old stories can. The old stories have always known. And that is why people once feared tomatoes. Not because of ignorance, not because of superstition, because they remembered, because the memory of what happened was passed down through generations, carried in whispers and warnings, preserved in the dark spaces where the light of progress could not reach. They remembered the woman who ate the fruit and changed. They remembered the village that disappeared. They remembered the red that spread and took and never let go. And they passed that memory to their children, and their children passed it to theirs, until the memory faded, until the fear became just a story, until the tomatoes won. If you have made it this far, something kept you here. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the story itself. Maybe it was the way the words fit together, the rhythm of the telling, the questions that opened and have not yet closed. Or maybe it was something else, something older, something that remembers the garden, something that knows the power of red. The platforms you use every day know about this power. They measure it. They optimize for it. They have teams of engineers and psychologists and data scientists whose only job is to figure out how to keep you watching just a little longer. They test colors. They test thumbnails. They test the precise shade of red that makes you click. They have built billion-dollar companies on the back of this knowledge, but they did not invent it. They borrowed it from the oldest part of your brain, the part that cannot look away from red, the part that remembers Agnes, even if you have never heard her name, the part that knows somehow that the fruit on your plate is not just food. It is door. It is invitation. It is the thing that calls to something in the dark. If you enjoyed this story, if it held you, kept you, made you want to know what happens next, then tap the like button. Not because it helps the algorithm, not because the platform wants you to, but because the act of liking is an act of attention, and attention is what this story is about. Attention is what the red wants. Attention is what the platforms want from you. Attention is the most valuable thing in the world, and you just gave it to me for 2 hours. Think about that. Think about what kept you here. Think about the color red. Think about the garden, and then ask yourself, who is really in control of your attention? You, or something that has been waiting for you to look? If this story stirred something in you, if you felt that pull, that hunger, that need to know what happens next, then you understand now. You understand why tomatoes were feared. You understand why the fear was real. You understand what Agnes discovered all those years ago in her garden of red and silence. She discovered that some fruits are not meant to be eaten. Some doors are not meant to be opened. And some reds, once they get inside you, never let go. And now you know too. So share this video with someone who needs to understand the dark secret behind the red harvest. Share it with someone who has ever wondered why tomatoes look at you the way they do. Share it with someone who needs to know that the warnings were real, and then follow for more stories about the hidden origins of ordinary things, because there are many everyday things around us with strange beginnings that people rarely talk about. The food on your table, the clothes on your back, the color on your lips, the fruits in your garden. Each one has a story. Each one comes from somewhere. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the somewhere is darker than you can imagine. Here in this place, we explore them all. So stay close, stay curious, and always return here for more original, unbelievable stories about the hidden origins of everything. The garden is still there. The women are still there. The red is still there, waiting, always waiting for you. And the next time you see a tomato in a grocery store, in a garden, on your plate, think about Agnes. Think about the village that disappeared. Think about the door and ask yourself, who is really choosing what you eat? You, or something that has been waiting for you to take the first bite?